If I may interrupt for just a moment. Hi, I'm Janine Lauschat, and this is the 990th edition of Motorsports Unlimited. Our regular viewers have probably heard Bill say many times, we don't present nearly enough sport aviation on Motorsports Unlimited. Well, we've got a good one coming up at the Lansing Airport, and we'll be telling you more about it as this show goes on. But first, I would like to tell you the material you're about to see to get you excited about aviation was shot 11 years ago, and much has changed, including the location of the Air Classics Museum of Aviation. It is now located at the Aurora Municipal Airport in Sugar Grove, Illinois. Patty and I will be popping in from time to time to update you with current information as needed to enjoy this great show about classic aircraft and sport aviation. Let's join Tim Murtaugh as he explains.
Bit of what they have on display, and we're also going to talk about their big upcoming air show. Well, it's really...
Please remember, this material was shot some 11 years ago. Hi, I'm Patty Borowitz, and the ultimate show of motion Tim was talking about was a spectacular success, but it was held a decade ago. On today's show, we're going to be telling you about a very special show coming up at the Lansing Airport, June 11, 2006, involving Henry Ford, the 80th birthday of the Ford hangar, Model A Fords, and a Ford tri-motor. But first, we want to get you excited about airplanes.
We have an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous day outdoors right now, and just some of the most gorgeous warbirds that you have ever seen in your life. We are at DuPage Airport. Crystal, why are we inside then?
I think because we're going to see some kind of a laser light show, but I really want to hurry up with this part to get outside.
You're exactly right. Well, the reason she wants to hurry up is she hasn't seen this yet. I have, and this is very, very cool. And what we are going to be talking about here a lot today is, of course, we're going to talk about the Aviation Museum that they've got here in the DuPage Airport, and we're going to show you the warbirds and all that. But we're also going to be talking extensively about this huge air show, and it's not right to call it an air show. We started our shot where it said ultimate show of motion. Yes, it's an air show. Yes, they're going to have warbirds, and they're going to have dog fights, and they're going to have a dog fight between, as I understand it, a Sabre jet and a MiG fighter. They're going to have all that kind of stuff, but they're also going to have cars on display and locomotives and boats. It's going to be just an incredible, wonderful show. But that's not all there's going to be, and the reason we're inside today, Mike, if you would, please come on in here. First of all, Mike, I'd like you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, I'm Mike Werner from LaserTech Productions.
Okay, and apparently you guys have gotten involved with this thing because this is for a wonderful cause, and everybody is kind of making a contribution. We got people bringing in boats and airplanes and all that. But as I understand it, in addition to all that stuff, there's going to be, I'm going to have to talk to Walter. I understand there's going to be a carnival, and there's also going to be a radio station coming out here, and they're going to do some kind of a huge dance thing with the laser light show?
That's correct. That's going to take place Saturday night. It's a pretty fantastic dance. It's a country western dance. What we're going to get involved with, we're going to produce a 12-minute to 15-minute long stereoscopic 3D laser light show.
Okay, wait a minute. What is a stereoscopic 3D light show? What is that?
It's the type of show in which you put on a pair of glasses and the images appear to hang literally in 3D space.
Okay, this is going to be another one of those things, folks, that I tell you all the time on our program, that you can't, all we can do on TV is give you kind of a taste of it. You have to see this in person, am I right?
Definitely. We're going to fill a 30,000 square foot hangar, and it's going to be really exciting.
Okay, and what we've done here today in order to give you just a little bit of a taste of it is we've taken a little...
Please remember, as we have already explained, this material was taped 11 years ago. The ultimate show of motion was a huge success more than a decade ago. What we're going to be telling you about today is the Sport Aviation event coming up at the Lansing Airport, June 11th, 2006. But first, we want to check out some airplanes.
If we can hit those lights, Harry, let's take a look and see what this is about and tell us what we're looking at.
What you're seeing here is a little bit of the types of effects that you'll see at the actual show. Here we've got our mobile unit. We'll be using different equipment, of course, that evening and throughout those days. But this gives you kind of a feel of the excitement and the color and how the images seem to hang in 3D.
It is absolutely exceptional, and I want the girls to really appreciate it. So, Mike, if you won't mind, I'm going to run away from you girls. I want you to see this over here from the right angle. Chuck, just keep your shot wide. This is a little bit crazy in here to try to get this little mini. Girls, if you would, please come on over here. Yeah, I know it's dark. You're going to walk over here, but I want you guys to see that this is something pretty special. Now, look at the images up there. Isn't that spectacular? And you have to imagine this being in a huge, huge hangar with music. This is going to be very cool. Now, it's time to get out to those airplanes. This was just a little taste of this because apparently they're going to have everything at the show. If you guys would, all tuck yourselves together and tell the folks.
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
Television doesn't do justice to the laser lights. You really have to experience it in person, and you'll have a chance at the ultimate show of motion. Now, let's go outside and enjoy some of the wonderful aircraft on display at the Air Classics Museum of Aviation.
Crystal, this is sort of the Sara Lee of World War II aircraft. What do you think I mean by that?
It's got to be the cream of the crop. I mean, it's just gorgeous.
Well, that was pretty good, actually. That wasn't what I was thinking of. What I was going to say is this is the Sara Lee of World War II aircraft because, like Sara Lee, nobody doesn't love a P-51 Mustang. Absolutely everybody's favorite World War II airplane. And I was so crushed the last time I was out here at this Museum of Aviation. I was so crushed. I have always been under the impression that this was the fastest propeller airplane of all time, and they showed me the Hawker Sea Fury, which is the fastest. I was so disappointed, but we're going to talk about all that. And first, we're going to talk about the airplane a little bit. And we've got a guy here that knows a whole lot more about it than I do. And if we would, please introduce yourself to our audience.
I'm Mike Ferguson,
Mike, what is your role out here at the museum?
a tour guide.
Tour guide, and as I understand it, you're also the historian.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay, now tell us about the P-51 Mustang, and I would like to start technically, even though I know probably your expertise is more from a historical perspective.
Correct. The Mustang was primarily built for the British. They wanted a high-altitude, high-speed fighter to replace the P-40D, a Warhawk, most famous for its tiger mouth with the nationalist Chinese with Claire Chennault. The P-40 was found, well, Curtiss couldn't build them the P-40 enough, so they contracted North American. They found that North American had a good history of building aircraft. They designed the P-51. They wanted a plane in 120 days, and North American was able to deliver them the Mustang in 117.
Isn't that interesting? And Chuck, if you would, if you haven't done so already as we're talking, I want you to show the audience this gorgeous aircraft. Isn't that interesting that was something that was done almost on the spur of the moment, turned out to be the icon, really, of World War II fighter planes. Would you agree?
Absolutely. It was a very fast, very maneuverable aircraft with a lot of firepower.
Okay, technically, kind of engine?
It's a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. Rolls-Royce couldn't actually provide the engine for this aircraft, so Packard was given the license to build the Rolls-Royce Merlin. It's a V12 carbureted dual-stage supercharged engine.
Do we have an idea how much power it makes?
1,600 horsepower.
Really a relatively small amount of horsepower for such a fast airplane.
Yeah, comparatively.
Okay, and as I understand it, and please believe me, I am not an aircraft expert, but as I understand it, one of the reasons it was so fast is because, and let me explain this to our gearheads out there, the advantage of the V12 engine was it gave it a very narrow cross-section into the wind, so much less wind resistance than the big radials that made significantly more power.
Yeah, well, there's been some controversy on that. The Mustang was a very narrow fuselage, very good on fuel consumption. The P-47, the later models, were as fast or faster than the Mustang, but it had a very wide frontal area and consumed a lot of fuel.
And did it with something in the vicinity of twice the horsepower.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it used it was like plowing a barn through the air.
Yes.
Okay, a couple of real interesting things about this. And Chuck, again, you're going to have to tell me, I want you to take a look at the underbelly of this aircraft. This thing, of course, has the famous P-51 mid-belly air intake, which was important in the design of the aircraft. What function does that serve?
That's a radiator and oil cooler under there. It also had an advantage of providing a little bit of thrust. It was just kind of a side light. The guy who designed this, I think his last name was Meredith, discovered the Meredith effect with the air going through that scoop would actually provide a little bit of thrust.
Okay, in addition, the one thing that the negative side of that scoop is that it made these aircraft very vulnerable to ground fire if they were to use it like to be called in for an airstrike or something to support ground troops. That made it very vulnerable.
Right. Some pilots had said if you stick a knitting needle in the belly of a P-51, it'd bleed to death in 5 minutes because you have all your coolant and your oil running through that radiator, and that's a scoop.
then if you were to just like something touch that, it would just burst it?
Well, you know, it's
that
more
what
or
you're
less
saying?
ground fire.
Oh,
Small
okay.
arms fire.
In other words, just to clarify this, and I'm glad you asked that question because I can see that we're not explaining it well, that most of the big, in fact, the big radial engine aircraft for the Bearcat and others, the P-47 Thunderbolt and all that, these were air-cooled engines. So even if they took bullets into the cylinders, it may knock off fins and stuff, but the coolant didn't come out. This is a liquid-cooled engine, meaning it has radiators and all that, and this, again, remember, this is an aluminum aircraft, and ground fire, gunshots could go right through that scoop and punch a hole in the radiator and squirt out all of the fluid, so that made it vulnerable. On the other hand, because it was liquid cooled, it had this very narrow profile. It got great fuel mileage, great top speed, and its most important contribution in the war, please tell the folks.
The high altitude escort of our bombers to and from their bases in Germany, all the way, or from England to Germany. They were able to escort the entire distance. Prior to that, our planes were limited to taking it partially to the target and then having to turn around because they were out of fuel. The Germans naturally took advantage of that and would attack as soon as our escorts would leave.
Right, understand how important this is. We're trying to send bombers over Germany to win World War II, and the bombers could only be escorted by fighter planes part way, and as soon as they weren't escorted, they could be picked out of the sky quite easily, so we were suffering horrendous bomber losses and tons of lives lost because we couldn't escort them all the way. Along comes the P-51 Mustang. The P-51 Mustang can escort them all the way to Germany and back, immediately cut the losses, just an incredible amount, and many people feel was really responsible for the victory, at least in Europe. Agreed?
Agreed, absolutely.
Okay, anything else that we don't know about this aircraft that we should know? Because I know something and I'm going to add it, but go ahead if you have something else you want to tell us about.
Primarily, this aircraft is painted in the markings of Major George Preddy, the leading Mustang ace of World War II. He had 26.83 victories, and all of them were in the Mustang. He was unfortunately lost over the Battle of the Bulge, Christmas Eve, 1944.
Okay, and by the way, I wanted to tell the audience something. We in the Chicagoland area have a wonderful treasure out here. This is just the first of many planes that we're going to show you today. If you ever get an opportunity to come out to this aviation museum, you guys are open all the time, right?
Saturdays and Sundays during the summer. Well, up until now, we may change our hours later on, but right now it's Saturday and Sunday.
Okay, and I mean this is a treasure that anybody in Chicago ought to come out and enjoy. And again, we're going to be talking about this over the course of the program. But if I forget later on, this is just straight out North Avenue, so it's not hard to find this at all. Everybody in Chicago knows where North Avenue is.
Please remember what we said before. The Air Classics Museum of Aviation has been moved to the Aurora Municipal Airport in Sugar Grove, Illinois.
In addition to all that other stuff is, Chuck, if you would, if you're not already doing so, you pull your shot back. They got the lines just right. This reminds me a little bit of, for example, a Cobra, a Ford Cobra. Some vehicles are they got the lines right. Isn't this the prettiest thing?
It is, absolutely. It's very smooth. All the fittings are flush, all the rivets are flush. It's just a gorgeous aircraft.
And they got the lines just right. It really, the P-51 Mustang strikes everybody. Now, I want to thank you for spending some time with us. We've got a lot of planes to look at today, and I've left the other girls out of this way too long, so please don't run away. But let me come down here. Tina, what do you think up there? I know you can't yell down. And Christine, what do you think in the cockpit? Let me get over here. Pretty cool in there, and just yell for me.
Awesome.
It's awesome. Okay. Your feet are on fire. Okay. Let me come all the way down here. Crystal, please, if you would, tell the folks.
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
In addition to being a beautiful airplane, the P-51 Mustang is rich in history, and the folks at the museum are always happy to explain. Now, before we go any further, let's take a moment to meet the girls on today's show.
Hi, I'm Chris Schutz.
I'm Crystal Kuchan.
I'm Peggy O'Donnell.
I'm Tina Lou. And I'm Sue Kuchan.
Thank you, girls. Now, let's get back to the airplanes with something from the Korean War era, a stunning F-86 jet fighter.
When you talk about threshold airplanes and airplanes where they got the lines just right, you are definitely talking about the Sabre jet. These things have a rich history. These are the Korean War airplanes. We're going to talk about all that. And we're going to talk about the airplane technically a little bit. But our audience that saw this plane when we were here in the winter taking a few shots of it, it was under restoration at the time. I hope are absolutely overwhelmed by the work that these guys have done. And the fellas right over here have done a lot of this work. We're going to get back to these guys and talk to them a little bit. But first I want to find out about the aircraft itself. And as I understand, this thing is done up in some pretty famous, or at least a pretty famous person's colors as far as the way he flew one of these airplanes. Before we get to all that, we get the most important guy. This is the guy that actually owns the aircraft, and you are?
My name's Mike Keenum.
Mike, I understand this is your aircraft, but you also have a connection with the museum.
That's correct. I'm the one of the directors and chairman of the board of the museum here.
Can you tell us, before we get to your airplane a little bit, I'd like to know a little bit more about the museum. First of all, obviously I'm a motorsport person, as are all the people that I know, so we are absolutely infatuated with something like that. I must admit, until about a year or so ago, I wasn't even aware that they had an aircraft museum out here with all of these great warbirds. How long has this been here?
Well, we've actually been at DuPage just slightly over a year, but we've been a museum for almost 4 years now. We were located at another field, had our collection kind of hodgepodged around, and were able to secure space and move it all here centrally.
Well, then I don't feel totally dumb that it only has been here about a year. So I mean, I couldn't believe when I first came out here. I can't believe this is out here, and I didn't know about it. Now, let's get to the F-86 a little bit. Tell us about Sabre jets in general, and this one specifically.
Well, Sabre jets in general were the star of the Korean War. They enjoyed a kill ratio of several to one over the MiG-15, which was its jet adversary. This aircraft here did not serve in Korea. This one served here in the United States and then went down to South America, where many of the models that you see flying here in the United States wound up. That's how we got them back. This airplane is in the livery of John Glenn, a senator from Ohio, but more importantly, an astronaut and a fighter pilot in the Marines in the Korean War. They had a swap program where the Marine aviators, who generally did ground support and didn't get a chance to go up and fight with the enemy, would come into an Air Force unit, be able to fly this aircraft, and actually have a chance at dogfighting, which was not something they generally was their role in Korea. And Senator Glenn bagged, as you can see, 3 MiGs as designated by the 3 stars on the side of the canopy.
Well, now I've got to ask you. It says Mad Dog Marine on the side. MiG Mad. This is what John Glenn called himself?
Absolutely. Well, this is what he called the airplane. This airplane is identical in every respect to the plane he flew as a MiG Mad Marine, and that was his moniker.
You know, we see these guys on television now, and they seem so serious and so studious and so leader-like and presidential and all that. You don't think of them as flying an airplane that says MiG Dog Marine.
Well, just goes to show you, when we were younger, all the crazy things that we do.
Exactly. Crystal, you had a question?
They told me that this is the only plane in the world that has John Glenn's colors on it.
That's correct. There is no other one.
Okay, this is another one of those planes. Chuck, if you pull your shot back, I want the audience to see the lines of this aircraft. This one, in my opinion, is another one of those, although in my mind, there's no such thing as a bad-looking airplane, but this is another one of those aircraft where I think they got the lines just right, like the P-51 Mustang. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous airplane. Interesting, this was one of our very first jet fighters.
This was one of the first jet fighters, but certainly the first successful air combat jet fighter where it could go against the enemy and actually win. This is made, in coincidence, by the same company that made the P-51, so maybe that's where they got its good lines from.
Boy, somebody draws good airplanes over there. There's no question about it, if that's a proper way to put it. Now, you mentioned that this was the airplane, and again, this is very important because the last time we were out here, I couldn't believe it. None of the girls had ever even heard of a MiG, so we take these things for granted that everybody, I promise you this, one of these days, somebody's going to say to me, Vietnam. I mean, I feel like I'm really getting older, but the MiGs, so the audience knows what we're talking about, the MiG was the Russian fighter plane that was considered during the Cold War, and certainly during the Korean War, they supplied the North Koreans, and we, of course, supported South Korea. So the MiG was the nemesis of this aircraft, and as I understand it, during this big air show, and I don't want to say air show, this big ultimate show of motion that you guys are having next month, you are going to engage in a dogfight with a MiG?
Well, and the plan is that I'm supposed to win no matter what happens.
It's like professional wrestling now.
Absolutely. It's fixed.
It's a good thing, because I don't think we need to crash any of these things. There are darn few of these things left. But you guys are going to engage in a little bit of a mock combat?
We're gonna go up and play a little bit with the crowd and have some fun. And actually today, if the cameras are around, we're going to take this one up and give you a little preview of what it looks like in the air.
Okay, again, yes.
I also have a question. It might sound silly, but I don't know about planes.
No, I want you to ask.
Where do the bullets or whatever they use come out? What do they use? And how are they fired?
Perfect question. If you guys have questions, that's what I want you. That's why I got you here. Yes.
Okay, well, this held 6 50 caliber machine guns, and if you'll scan to the nose, you'll see 3 holes on one side.
Hold on, let me just show her. Let me step right out here, Peggy. All right, just right over here. And if you look at it, this is 3 machine guns here, 3 machine guns on the other side. Now, were they all outfitted with 6 machine guns, or did they ever use cannons? Or
they actually did use a cannon in some of the very later models for more firepower. It fired a little slower, but it had a lot more hit when it hit something. But the majority of them flew with this style.
Was this one of the first airplanes, and as I recall, I might be talking about the wrong airplane, that actually ran into its own bullets?
No, won't run into its own bullets.
Okay, but there are...
But it'll run into the other guy's bullets.
Well, I understand that. But there are aircraft. I know they started having that problem perhaps with supersonic airplanes where they would shoot, go into a dive, come up and hit themselves.
What usually they were running into was the stuff flying up from the ground after it hit, and they'd fly into their own shrapnel, so to speak. So, but generally speaking, you can't fly into your own bullets. They thought maybe that would be a problem, but the laws of physics won't allow you to do that.
So on this particular plane, there was only 3 on each side, and that was it. Okay.
That was it.
Okay, and this really, and I want to just real quickly, because do you know the year this was made?
This was made in 1952.
Okay, this was made in 1952. Give you, because we're going to show you the Hawker Sea Fury in a minute. I'm continually defending our position because I always thought the Mustang P-51 was the fastest of all the propeller planes, and it turns out it's the Hawker Sea Fury. You're nodding your head, so you know, and I didn't. And I was a little bit annoyed by that because that's not an American airplane, of course. That's a British airplane. However, I'd like to make the comment that what the heck were they doing in 1954 building propeller airplanes when in 1952 we had jets?
That's right. That's the British for you.
That's the British for you. They have a unique charm all of their own. Now, please don't run it. Is there anything else you want to tell us about the plane or its history before I go? Because I understand these guys did a ton of work on this thing down here.
A ton of work. If it looks good, and boy, it does, and I sure hope it comes out in the camera that looking this good. It's not mine. It's theirs.
Let me go down and talk to them. Please don't run away because I'm going to come back. Folks, I wanted you to meet the people. When you take a look at this thing and you see all of this gorgeous polished aluminum, let me tell you something. That wasn't done by any machine. We had human beings up here sanding and polishing, and these are the guys apparently that did the work, and you are?
Bob Kuhn.
From?
Warrenville.
And?
Rick Swanson.
From?
West Chicago.
Okay, who did most of the work between you guys?
I guess I did.
you honestly, you're going to accept that?
Yeah, I'll say that.
Okay, what did you have to do to it to get it in this kind of shape?
Several times of sanding, starting with 420, 320, 400 and 600 grit sandpaper. And then it's all wet sanding before we even thought about starting to polish it.
How long did it take?
I think I have about 200 hours just by myself.
And yourself?
Probably around 100 hours or so.
Okay, big question then. Why did you do it? And I want the audience to listen to this because they might not even know. I'm going to tell them, why did you do it?
Because I'm very proud of Air Classics. I like to be around here. The guys are great, and it's for a good cause. It's just a lot of fun. It's a beautiful aircraft, and the before and after tells the whole story.
The answer is these guys love airplanes. I'm not saying they like airplanes. These guys love airplanes. Am I right?
You're right. Yeah, that's true.
You're right, and there's nothing like a labor of love, and I'm going to tell you something, guys. It's gorgeous, yes.
What was the plane that replaced this one? The next plane?
Help me, the next plane. What was the next step up in technology?
Oh, boy. The F-104.
F-104?
F-100.
Now, was that supersonic?
Yes.
Okay, so this is subsonic, Chris. You have to understand the difference. This won't break the speed of sound. The next step was a supersonic airplane. That's how there's subsonic and supersonic, those that can break the speed of sound. And that's what the next jump in technology went from. But this is an absolutely gorgeous airplane. Again, guys, congratulations. You did a great job on this thing. By the way, Chris, I asked, and Chuck, I don't know if you can see it or not, I asked the girls to take a look at those flaps that are sticking out the back of the airplane about midships, and I asked them to see if you can figure out what they were, and I understand somebody went and told you. What are they?
They're speed brakes.
That's exactly right. Those
it's
are
sort of like
brakes.
Sticking your feet out or your arms
like
out.
Opening the car doors.
Yeah.
You're going down the road at 100, open the car doors, and it'll slow you down.
Right.
Exactly right. Thanks a lot, guys. Beautifully done. Tina, what do you think up there? Are you ready? You going to try flying this thing?
Heck no, Bill.
Pretty cool up there?
Awesome. But you know what? I don't know how a person runs this with only 2 hands. There's so many controls up here and everything. I don't know. How do you do it?
Well, we've got the pilot right here. This guy flies it, and as I understand, is going to try to fly it today?
That's our fervent hope.
Okay, well, I hope we're going to get some shots of this, and she is asking, how can one person fly that? There are so many controls, handles, and buttons up there.
He's very talented.
I knew you'd say that. Yes, Peggy.
Nothing. I was just wiping a spider off you.
That's okay. I'm not afraid at all.
Oh, well, we could be a wing walker.
No. We're going to do anything like that at all. Anyhow, Mike, I want to congratulate you. This is, I'm going to tell you something. We're having fun out here today. This is a colorful, warm thing, but I'm going to tell you something else. This really is no different than the people that are preserving Ferraris or the people that are preserving early Indianapolis cars at the Indianapolis Museum and everything. I am absolutely delighted that there are people out there that think this stuff is important enough to hold on to them, because there will never be any more of these. This is it. Am I correct?
That's correct. This is it.
So if we don't take care of the ones we have, they are gone forever, like a species.
Absolutely.
Crystal?
And isn't it nice that future generations will be able to appreciate what people before us took for granted?
And that's what these guys do.
That's correct. Piece of history.
Piece of history, and we're saving it. I want to thank you for spending some time with us. Peggy, tell the folks.
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
Later in the day, Mike Keatum did a spectacular flyby in his gorgeous F-86, and we're going to show it to you. So don't go away. Right now, we're going to join Peggy as she enjoys a close look at the world's fastest propeller fighter plane, the Hawker Sea Fury.
Our littlest girl over here, Tina, standing absolutely underneath. You're the only one who could fit under the wing.
That's correct.
What do you think of these planes, Dave? Are these things something special to look at?
Absolutely.
They really are beautiful. This is another one of those things. It's almost like looking at sculptures. These things are absolutely exquisite and absolutely beautiful, and they're literally in show condition, absolutely first class. Now, this is the plane, I've got to say, that kind of frustrates me. And Chuck, if you can, show the audience this propeller up here. We showed you the big P-51 Mustang earlier, and I always thought that the P-51 Mustang was the fastest propeller airplane of them all, and it turns out the Hawker Sea Fury, this is it, and this is on display here all the time for people that want to come out to the museum. This one is always here, and take a look at the fastest propeller airplane in the world. And the one thing you should take a look at right off the bat is, yes, the P-51 has that huge 4-bladed prop. This one has a huge 5-bladed prop. And the girls, before we went on, asked, well, what would be the difference? Why would one have a 5-bladed prop and a 4? And it has to do with power. The more power, the bigger prop you can pull, and the more blades. And do I have that about right?
You've got it about right, sir.
And you are?
Bob McConnell.
Where are you from, Bob?
I'm from Naperville.
And what's your role with this museum?
I'm one of the volunteers, and I'm also the club instructor.
You're another guy that loves airplanes.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you that, folks, everybody that's out here, don't hesitate to ask these folks questions when you come out here and have a look at this museum. These guys love their work. Most of them are volunteers.
Yes, they are. Most of them are volunteers.
Because they like being around airplanes.
Just for the pure joy of it and the preservation of the aircraft.
Tell us about the Hawker Sea Fury.
Well, the Hawker was actually a carrier-based aircraft. It was designed late in the Second World War. What the British felt that they needed was a high-altitude attack-type aircraft to stem the tide of the bombers, etc., as the war was going on. As it turned out, the aircraft was not ready for the Second World War, but it was used quite a bit in the Korean War, and also had some MiG kills to its credit.
Now that strikes me as being almost impossible, being that the MiG fighters and of course the Saberjet fighters have got to be faster.
They were faster, but our pilots were much better trained. We've got a monstrous engine on this thing. It's 2,550 horsepower.
Okay, which explains why this thing can pull a huge 5-bladed prop, where the Mustang, only 1,600 horsepower, could only pull the big 4-bladed prop.
That's correct. It needed the 5 blades really to harness the power. It had a great climb ratio, and it was the fastest aircraft production-wise of the Second World War.
Now, you might not know this. Just the other night, I was watching on ESPN. They had the air races there, and they had something called Rare Bear. And I was watching Rare Bear, and I was watching it drive away from the field, and somewhere second or third place was a Hawker Sea Fury. So I'm saying to myself, well, wait a minute. Those guys out at the museum were saying that the Hawker Sea Fury is the fastest. Then somebody told me, I was asked today, that the Rare Bear is also a Sea Fury?
The Rare Bear is actually a Grumman Bearcat, and it's highly modified. It's using a Constellation engine.
So it's not a fair comparison then?
No, not really. It is highly modified for the racing circuit.
It's like a race car?
That's correct.
Okay, history of this thing then is kind of it should have overlapped. End of World War II, beginning of the Korean War, but it didn't work out that way. They didn't get into World War II. They got into the taste of the Korean War.
That's correct, sir.
So that's why we end up with a British airplane being the fastest propeller airplane in the world, because it was probably the last propeller fighter ever developed.
That's correct. It was the last fighter that was developed, and it was developed as an interceptor.
Well, boy, I'm telling you, this is an absolutely gorgeous piece of work. 2,800 horsepower as opposed to the Mustang's 1,600 horsepower. We're talking a significant difference. But I want to point out something else, if the audience would. Despite their efforts here with the huge spinner and a very nice nose cowling, the fact of the matter is this airplane has a much bigger cross-section to push through the wind than the Mustang does.
That is correct. The Mustang is very sleek. It has a V-type engine, water-cooled, whereas this is a radial-designed engine, which is air-cooled.
Exactly, and the air cooling gives you the advantage that it can take ground fire very well, but because it's a radial engine, it means it's all spread out and it puts a big piece of cross-section into the wind.
That is correct. The Mustang was very poor for ground support because it was easily damaged from ground fire.
Sure, the cooling system.
That's correct.
Okay, well listen, I want to thank you. Yes, I'm sorry, Crystal.
I just have to say this to all of our viewers, there's just nothing like standing next to this prop to make you feel small.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. Television has proven to be very frustrating to me because it's not the same. It's pictures of the stuff, but you really appreciate standing with these pieces of history. I mean, you just have to come, and we're right here in Chicagoland. Why don't you come? It's close. Walt, please come on over here. We've got our old friend Walt Taff. You've met him. In fact, Walt, I'm going to have you step right over the cable, right next to your friend here. Once again, please reintroduce yourself to our audience.
I'm Walt Taff, and I'm on the board of directors for Air Classics.
This is the guy that puts so much stuff together you wouldn't believe it, and I want you to talk a little bit about. We're out here to show you folks this museum. I don't want people anywhere in the city of Chicago or the Chicagoland area to not know about this great aviation museum out here. But at the same time, we've got something that is close to my heart going on. You guys have put together what was always an air show every year, as I understand it, but this year you have changed this thing entirely and called it the Show of Motion. It's going to have the air show like always, with all the warbirds like always, and with the MiG versus the Sabre jets and all of the other stuff that goes on. But that's not the end of it. That's only the beginning, isn't it?
That's correct, and it is the ultimate show of motion. And what we've done besides
Remember,
aviation,
the show Walt is talking about was held more than a decade ago. What we want to tell you about today is the upcoming Sport Aviation Show to be held June 11th, 2006 at Lansing Airport in Lansing, Illinois. It seems they have an original hangar built by Henry Ford 80 years ago. This being the Ford hangar's 80th birthday, they planned something special.
In addition to the annual fly-in featuring all kinds of great aircraft, they're having a display of Ford Model A automobiles and a very special appearance by a Ford Tri-Motor, one of history's most important aircraft. Now, how many of you knew Ford ever made airplanes?
In a circle around the IMAX IndyCar. We've got motorcycle groups, we've got bicycle groups, the Super Connie's going to be there, and in the background, which the cameraman might be able to get, is an old staircase that was donated to us from Delta Airlines, which is significant with the Connie in that era. Let's see, what else do we have? We have a World War II camp the size of a half a football field with World War II reenactment people living in the camp all weekend. I'm bringing in 5 restored World War II tanks that'll be involved in a battle on the field with over 200 reenactors. And I have graciously decided to pay for their blanks. And all of a sudden I might have 500 reactors because they are reenactment people, because now they want to use that ammunition and shoot up their guns.
You haven't even mentioned the dance and the radio.
This is true.
And the carnival. She wants to know about the carnival.
We have an 18-ride carnival. He's waving his hands out there. I think that means we're running out of film.
well, I'll tell you what. He's waving his hands. We're going to close this down, and we're going to come right back because I want to talk more about this. I want to thank you for spending time and sharing this airplane with us. Girls, if you would, together, please tell the folks.
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
As we were changing tapes, Mike Keenum decided to take his newly restored F-86 Sabre out for a test hop. Let's watch as he fires it up for the first time.
Following startup and an extensive pre-flight, he was ready to taxi out.
We were all very excited. This was the aircraft's maiden flight following restoration, and Mike Keenum made it a good one.
Wow, you really had to be there. Let's watch as Mike returns.
Sorry, brother, I didn't know if you were going to be able to talk.
Seeing Mike Keenum's F-86 come to life was a thrill, but now it was time to get back with Walt Taft for a look at another aircraft and to learn more about the ultimate show of motion.
I think we finally got a plane here that's Tina's size. What do you think, Tina?
This is perfect for me, Bill.
Yes, you're our littlest girl, and this is a half-scale P-47 Thunderbolt. These were, the full-scale version of these were affectionately called the Jug in World War II. Why do you suppose that was?
I have no idea.
They were called the Jug because these things used those big, massive radial engines, a big, powerful radial engine, and the airplane looked massive and huge in the front and had a fat fuselage behind it to match the shape of the radial motor, and sort of a stubby, fat-looking airplane that they called the Jug, although it was treated with great affection because it was one of the most successful fighters of World War II. It could take a tremendous amount of ground fire without being downed, and it also had many, many, many kills to its credit. It was actually a very, very good airplane, except it certainly wasn't pretty like the P-51 Mustang. Do I have any of that right, Walt?
You've got it all correct. All correct. And this one here in particular was as a half scale, like you said, and the owner is Lieutenant Colonel Emil Marino, retired Air Force, and he was a navigator on B-24 Liberators during the World War II, and also it took him 10 years to build this aircraft that we're sitting next to, and he flies it.
Well, he certainly did a beautiful, beautiful job. Now, before we forget, we were talking about the air show coming up, and one thing I want to mention is that, first of all, the dates, before I forget to do that.
July 22nd and 23rd is the weekend.
Please remember, that was 1995.
20th through the 23rd and into the evenings all those days, and that's by All Star Amusements.
So it's a whole week almost of festivities.
Just about.
And the proceeds are all going, we've got actually a twofold thing here.
Well, the proceeds are going to Air Classics to do our new building fund, which we want to build. We're looking at a 100,000 square foot facility, and also 4 charities on the field. Markland Home for Children at DuPage, CASA out of Kane County, Little City out of Palatine, and the first cancer camp for kids in the state of Illinois.
So, come for the airplanes, come for the cars, come for the motorcycles, come for the air show, come for the carnival, come for the laser light show, come for just a wonderful afternoon out. Also, come for a great cause. Fair?
And also, we have a dance on Saturday evening on July 23rd with US 99's Wild Bill Garcia and his band. And we have a special treat. We're going to put a laser show to that whole evening. And all the proceeds that evening go to the children's charities that I have named. Plus, the carnival will be open that evening for all the folks.
So I'm going to tell you something, folks. There's one comment I want to make here. As we look at all these airplanes, I want you to remember something. We're not at the Smithsonian. We're not in Dayton. This is so close to Chicago. We're an hour from Chicago. You're absolutely just cheating yourself. You don't have to go to the Smithsonian to see these great World War II airplanes. Want to add anything to that? Or?
Well, we're going to, as soon as we're done here filming, we're going to give some of the girls a ride in these planes. Give them a real treat here this afternoon.
We should also say that, too. All of these planes here are all flyable airplanes.
Everything flies except the ones in the background there, which you filmed earlier, which is our A-26 Invader. That's ready for restoration next year. And we have a T-39 from the Air Force, which is more or less we open it up just for the kids. And I will add that about 2 weeks we'll have an A-7 Corsair, which has been donated by the U.S. Navy, and it'll be here at the museum.
Okay, one other thing I want to say here real quickly so people don't get confused. We are taping this. This is 1995, and the dates of this big show is going to be, once again, say it?
July 20th through the 23rd is the carnival, and July 22nd and 23rd is the event itself.
And we're talking 1995 for those of you that see it later, although the air show is an annual deal, right?
Next year, I can already tell you the dates in 1996 is July 20th through the 21st.
Okay, so this is an annual event, so every year, so regardless of when you see this program, this is something that's going to happen every year.
Show of Motion is going to happen every year, and I will leak this to you that in September of 1996, I'm going to bring air racing here to DuPage, the first time since 1933.
Now, wait a minute. Are you sure about this?
I'm sure about it. I wouldn't tell you.
Done deal.
Done deal.
Air races the first time since the 30s here in the Chicagoland area?
The last time air races were held here in Chicago was at Midway Airport, and it was the Thompson Trophy race, and it was sponsored by Chicago Tribune.
What are we going to call this one? Do you know yet?
Well, let's have a contest.
That's a thought. Anyhow, we've got more great planes to look at. Is there anything we've omitted about this great half-scale plane that we should say before we move on to the next one? Because I don't want to leave anybody out today.
No, I think you've covered everything on this. You have to be 4 feet tall to get into the cockpit, and I can't get in there, so I can't show you anything.
Even our little Tina couldn't do this one. Anyhow, thanks for spending time with us. I've kept them out of it too long. And on Motorsports Unlimited, when we keep the girls out of this thing for any length of time, I get real angry letters, so I don't want to do that. So let's come over here, and if you guys would, everybody together, tell the folks.
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
From the smallest aircraft on display, let's move to the largest and meet a man who in great measure is responsible for the creation of the Air Classics Museum of Aviation.
Well, as I understand it now, I've just been educated, what we have here is one of the heroes of this particular operation out here, and I'm going to make him real uncomfortable here because I've talked to several of the folks here, and they say that if it wasn't for this man, there wouldn't be a Museum of Aviation out here. I am sure eventually this will be big time funded with huge corporation grants and all that, but these things don't start that way. Somebody has to believe at the beginning, somebody has to get it done, somebody has to reach in their own pocket, somebody has to make it happen, and I understand this gentleman is the person to be blamed for or to be applauded. And if you would, please introduce yourself to our audience.
My name is Jack Rogers.
And where are you from, Jack?
Huntley, Illinois.
Give us an idea. What did you have in mind when you put this museum together?
My partner who recently died and I had, his name was Irv Lewandowski, we both believed in the old airplanes and what they meant to this country, and we wanted to preserve the history of World War II primarily, and all other wars that have defended this country and our ability to live the way we live.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we were talking off camera a little bit. This gentleman really does feel that way about this and made an interesting point. I tend to think of all of these aircraft and all the things we're looking at in a technical sense. I see all of the advances in technology that were made because of the wartime and the necessity for it and all that. You actually see it almost a little differently, although you probably see part of that. But you see these as instruments that really saved a way of life.
Absolutely. It is, to my opinion, these machines were the vehicles by which America was able to defend the free world during its attack by the Nazis and others, on the whole Axis powers. So World War II was a pivotal time that we could have all been on different complete governmental systems at this time.
You're right, and so we do owe these aircraft and the men that flew them an awful lot. Now, of course, we've got the girls in the shot, and Chuck, if you would, while we're talking, pull your camera shot back and take a look. The things that they're commenting on, they had no idea how risky this was. When you see this in war movies, it's a little bit different than being in one of these aircraft yourself and seeing the tight quarters these guys had to be scared to death, and I understand a couple 100,000 of them lost their lives in aircraft like this.
That's correct, just in the 8th Air Force in European theater. These are not armor plated. There's a little armor plate on the seats for the pilot and co-pilot, but there's no armor for the bombardier up there. He's got plexiglass and a little thin piece of aluminum around him, and somebody coming at him, shooting at him, and if they hit him, they hit him. There was very little protection. And the waist gunners and the tail gunner, very little protection. So flying these airplanes was was a risky business to say the least. And this particular plane has seen service in 4 Air Forces.
Really? Now, you know, the one point, I don't want to get past that point without telling the audience that when you see it in the movies, it's not quite the same as being in person. That's why you really kind of all owe it to yourselves to make a trip out here to DuPage Airport and come to this museum and really take a close look. And I can tell you, these guys are all real enthusiasts, and not everybody gets to go up in these things like our girls are. But if you talk to them real nice, maybe they'll let you take and poke around up there a little bit, because it changes your feeling completely. These guys that flew these things were genuine heroes, no doubt about it.
No doubt about it is right. And they're the folks that stood up there and did it when they had to do it. I could just tell you one quick story of another B-25 that is right over here, close by, southwest of us. But the man, there's a man there that received a Distinguished Flying Cross for attacking a Japanese battleship, and they shot his airplane up, and he ordered the crew to bail out. And he had a model with a cannon in it, and the cannoneer, the man that ran the cannon, decided not to bail out and said he'd stay with him, because this guy turned back and attacked the ship again, even though his plane was shot up, and he sank the destroyer.
Exactly. The stories are really, and once you've been inside of one of these planes, you can't really understand what we're talking about until you've stood next to it or tucked your head up inside of it and seen just how risky this was. Now let's talk about the B-25 a little bit. Sure. Tell us about B-25 Billy Mitchell bombers.
This is a B-25J series, which is commonly known as the Mitchell bomber, and it is obviously a twin engine. These engines are Wright R2600-35s. They're 1,700 horsepower apiece, quite reliable. The airplane was built by North American Aviation. This one went to the European theater early in its life in the American Air Force, and it is a very effective bomber, and it is an effective ground attack aircraft. They carried the 2 nose guns plus a swivel gun, which is not in this one, 4 cheek guns like this. They could put gun packs on the wing, and they also had a turret on top that had 2 forward-facing 50 caliber guns. So you could, in many configurations, you could be between 10 and 14 forward-facing 50 caliber guns, which was a very awesome piece of equipment. If you got in front of that, you were in big trouble. So,
as a matter of fact, this aircraft, not this one particularly, but an aircraft like this, was the one that made the 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, the famous Jimmy Doolittle run, was all done with B-25 bombers.
This model, it was the J's, and I flew the Doolittle Memorial Flight a year ago last, I believe it was June, from Fresno on up into the Bay Area in San Francisco, and there was 6 bombers and 6 P-51s flying cover, and we went right by Mr. Doolittle's house, or the general's house, and dropped flowers in the ocean in front of his house at Monterey, then flew through the bridge and on and through every Air Force base all the way up to and landed at Beale Air Force Base. It was one of the most moving experiences of my 32 years of flying, and it was just very amazing. All of the surviving people from the Tokyo raid were in a DC-3 overhead with the widow of Mr. Doolittle, and so they this whole thing was, if you're into aviation, it was a very moving experience, and about 3 hours and 20 minutes of formation in the 25s.
There's no question about it. There's tons of history out here, and I'm going to tell you something. Yes, they've got airplanes at this museum, and they've got other things, all kinds of World War II, but the most important thing they've got out here is people that really care about this, and historians that can explain it to you in great detail. As a matter of fact, I've got to ask a quick question. It would seem to me this would be ideal for tours from schools. Do you get any of that at all?
Oh yes, many schools. Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, all of the school type groups will come out, and we welcome that, and the whole idea here is to try to get our young people to understand the history that has made their freedom possible.
Boy, I'll tell you something, this is a very dramatic way to do it. So not only is this B-25 going to be on display at this big Ultimate Show of Motion, this will be the smallest of the bombers they've got, because they've got a B-17 coming, they've got a B-26 Liberator coming. Have I got it right?
B-24.
I'm sorry, B-24. I've got an expert here who can correct me. So this is going to be something pretty special. Jack, again, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for spending a little bit of time with us. I appreciate it very much. I don't want you to run away, because we've got a cute way of closing this. Girls, I'm going to put you guys to work. I want you guys to tell the folks, please.
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
The Air Classics Museum of Aviation focuses most of its attention on early military aircraft, but they also have some newer airplanes, and Jack Rogers does have a sense of humor.
Girls, this one's got the teeth painted on the nose, and why? What was that? What's significant about the teeth on the nose? Sue, tell me.
It was a different airplane fighter that they copied off of. I can't remember the name of it, but
P-40 Warhawk.
There you go. You told me.
P-40 Warhawk. Okay, let me come over here because they copied the P-40 Warhawk with the nose paint. And Jack, please tell us, what have we got here? What is this?
This is a YT-34C, a Beechcraft. It's a proof of concept airplane that was built. It is the current Navy trainer, the primary trainer that's still in service with our Navy.
I was going to say, when you taxied in with this thing, I heard it was a turboprop. I said, that's not an antique.
And yeah, this one was built in 1973, but it was the proof of concept airplane, and it's the only one of the three that were built that is together and flying.
And it's used for what purpose?
Primary training for navigation and aerobatics in the Navy.
And this is also something that's displayed out here?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Now we've got a more important person than Jack here. Tara, if you would, please step right on in here, because when I see a plane named Sweet Lips, and then I see the lady involved with the gentleman, I said that we have got to bring the girl out that the plane is the first.
Is it a good likeness?
Yeah, well, no, that's not, we're not looking at that part at all. First of all, please introduce yourself to our audience.
My name is Tara Perry.
And where are you from, Tara?
Oh, all over the place.
Okay, well,
originally from Connecticut, now from California.
Okay, you've had a plane named after you?
Yes, I guess so.
Yeah, I'm not sure. This is a little tongue-in-cheek because it said Sweet Lips, and you're obviously a very pretty girl, but this is not exactly Sweet Lips here, is it?
Well, I have a temper.
Oh, I get it. Okay, well, what I'd like to do is put you to work for a second. Can you do that?
Sure.
I want you to step out just a little bit here so the audience can see these teeth one more time, and I want you to take a look at our camera, and I want you to say...
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
We were rapidly running out of time, and there was much more to show you, so let's move quickly inside for a peek at another piece of history.
This is an aircraft just like the one that was flown by George Bush in World War II, and as a matter of fact, like the one he was shot down in. Please, Mike, if you would, tell us about it.
This is a TBM-3 Avenger. It's one of the last models the TBM produced. It was produced as a 3E. It had machine guns and a turret in the top. It was changed over to a 3U as a utility model by the elimination of the guns and the elimination of the turret in the back and the addition of seats.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. Here's what surprises me. I have seen these aircraft on television in a number of movies a lot of times, and I had no idea how big they are. They look more like fighter planes when you see them on television. When you stand here in person, it kind of looks like a bomber.
It is a bomber. It was a torpedo bomber.
Right. It has to hold one of those huge torpedoes underneath, and those things can weigh thousands of pounds.
Well, it was a 2,000-pound torpedo, and they had problems with the torpedo, so they took to carrying up to 4 500-pound bombs instead in the torpedo bay.
Again, this is another one of those things, folks, that you have to enjoy in person to really appreciate, because this is a big airplane, and it doesn't look that way. Now, don't run away, because Tina, I know, has got a question here. Tina, step out here, please. Right on over here. You took one look at these wings folding up like this and didn't go for that at all.
Nope.
What do you suppose they do that for?
To get it in?
To save space. A lot of these are hangar, I would assume, you can step back, I assume these things would have been perhaps carrier-based or something, and you need lots of room on the carrier.
All of them were carrier-based, yes.
Okay, these were carrier-based, so that, can you imagine, Chuck, if you would, Tina, come on up here with me for a second. This is not easy. Chuck, give me a tight shot if you can. That's okay, Tina, right over here. A tight shot if you can of all the mechanism that it takes. Remember, this has got to be strong. This supports the entire weight of the aircraft, and yet these things have to be able to duck out of the way. Pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, we got more to see, and let's. As long as I've got you right here, don't run away. Please tell the folks.
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back. I think we have time to squeeze in one more airplane.
rapidly running out of time, and there's a couple more things I want to mention real quickly. This steering.
There is no way a motorsport person wouldn't enjoy a day at the airport. Technically fascinating as well as rich in history. We hope to see everyone at the Lansing Airport June 11, 2006. Now, before we forget, let's take a moment to mention those who worked to create this update and save this old footage. Sue Cassanda, our webmaster Frank Barbalais, Rena Borwitz, Samantha Bentley, Janine Lauschat, and me, I'm Patty Borwitz.
Matter of fact, it's all to raise funds to keep the museum going.
That's correct. We try to collect as much as we can, and then that's to help us out with keeping the lights on in the museum.
Okay, again, I want to thank you for taking us through this great place today. We are looking forward to we're going to be there on Saturday, folks, but either day, this show is going to be just a wonderful show. I am really looking forward to it. The problem I'm going to have is I only got an hour TV program, and they got 30 hours. I'm going to have big problems. If you guys forward together, please tell the folks.
Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
The Air Classics Museum of Aviation, a very special place in Chicagoland. Unfortunately, we're out of time with only enough left to acknowledge the fine work of our award-winning production team, including Chuck Itzenthaler, John Kuchan, Keith Hansen, Frank Liu, John Papke, and Tom McGrady. Special thanks to JBTV's Jerry Bryant. Music is recorded for us by Fireside Recording Studio in Westchester, Illinois, and by independent artists Roger Pauley and Jerry Herbert. Of course, we have to take a moment to thank the stars of Motorsports Unlimited: Sue Kuchan, Chris Schutz, Crystal Kuchan, Tina Liu, Peggy O'Donnell, and our host, Bill Wildt. Me, I'm Tim Murtaugh, looking forward to the Ultimate Show of Motion July 22nd and 23rd at the DuPage Airport in West Chicago. Hope to see you there. Thanks for watching.
This program made possible in part by support from Copy That, located in the County Farm Plaza at County Farm Road and Army Trail Road in Carroll Stream, Illinois. This program made possible in part by support from PB Food Products, located on 47th Street at Western Avenue in Chicago, Illinois.
This program made possible in part by support from J.C. Whitney & Company, located just off I-80 at the Utica exit in LaSalle, Illinois.
Motorsports Unlimited is produced by Bill Wildt, president of the Motorsport Advancement Crusade.
This program made possible in part by support from Jimmy's Red Hots, located on Grand Avenue and Pulaski Road in Chicago.
This program made possible in part by support from the Chicagoland Toys for Tots Motorcycle Parade, held on Western Avenue in Chicago, the first Sunday in December.
This program made possible in part by support from ABC Auto Parts, located on Ashland Avenue at 138th Street in Blue Island, Illinois.
This program made possible in part by support from Bridgestone Firestone and your local Bridgestone Firestone tire retailers.
Motorsports Unlimited was created to raise public consciousness, understanding, and appreciation of the motorsport community and their activities. You can contact us by email at msutv.com, or you can write to Motorsport, P.O. Box 66242, Chicago, Illinois, 60666. We enjoy hearing from our audience. Please let us know what you think.
Next week on Motorsports Unlimited, we take you to Walt Taft's Ultimate Show of Motion. We couldn't tease you for an hour about it and then not show it to you. It was spectacular. All next week on Motorsports Unlimited.
So that's it, another edition of Motorsports Unlimited and the lovely ladies of motorsports. And be with us next week because we'll have something real exciting. Bill Wildt's going to have the lovely ladies, and just about anything can happen right here on Motorsports Unlimited. Every week at this time, we bring you the best in motorsports. So be seeing ya. Bye-bye. And keep on rocking.